Good morning, everybody. Today we're gonna have a special event conducted in English, and our guest speaker is Mr. John Howard Galindo, who is a TFL certified teacher with over 20 years of experience working in ELT as a coordinator, teacher, and teacher trainer. He holds a master's degree in digital marketing and a BA in business that has allowed him to understand education as a learning experience that needs to be approached differently. During all his professional life, he has been loyal to the promise of sharing knowledge to help others achieve better opportunities using English as a means to do so. He has been teaching at all levels of both formal and non-formal institutions, having worked with students and teachers from different countries in Latin America, sharing insights to motivate people to change the world one step at a time. John has combined his experience, his expertise in marketing and business to make meaningful lessons that motivate learners to reach their full potential. So without further ado, the floor is yours, John.
Thank you very much for that kind invitation. I would like to tell you something that lately has become like one of the most important things, and it is the power of bilingual education for a sustainable future. We commonly hear the question of, do you speak English? And it is something very common nowadays, and it's becoming more than a trend, a necessity. And it is no longer a trend, it is a need for everyone to be able to be productive, to participate in different things in the modern world. Another important factor is that it has a cognitive impact on people who are bilingual. I'm going to explain this later in the presentation. It definitely improves the quality of life of people who are bilingual, and it has a very, very great impact on work and academic life for many people. Something that is no secret is that English is now being used as a lingua franca, or as the mean of communication preferred by many people in the world for business, for education, for different things. And it is 1.3 billion people in the world who speak English. And something that is very curious is that only 80% of that 1.3 billion people are non-native speakers. So only 20% of them are native speakers of the language, which it's a very, very important indicator per se. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is that it has become a great necessity for most of the countries, and as you can see here in the last year's indicator by EF, Colombia is not located in one of the best places that we can say. Colombia now is ranked on 77%, that is considered very low. Even though we have had a lot of programs to motivate people to learn English, we have had a lot of efforts conducted by both government and private institutions. It has been like very difficult for a lot of people to get to that B1 level that is required to be proficient in the use of the language. But something that is true, and something to reinforce what I was telling you before, it has helped a lot of people. This is a clear example. 2019, 2020, the beginning of the pandemic. And at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a Japanese tourist in Peru, in Machu Picchu, and the only way to communicate was either Japanese or English. And he was trapped inside Peru when the pandemic made the governments and everyone close borders. And his only way to survive was a park ranger someone who spoke the language and someone who was able to give him a hand. So this is the clearest example that I can show that non-native speakers are the ones who are surviving the world, who are going through difficult situations nowadays. Something really interesting and something that I always share with students, with teachers, with program coordinators, and with everyone. And it is that it's a necessity. First picture on the top left, concert, music, electronic music, and an electronic music festival that gathers people from everywhere in the world. And the common language, English. People from different places travel long distances to gather around a specific topic, and besides the language of music, they use English to communicate and as the preferred mean of communication. In the top right, you can see a conference. And it's more and more common that nowadays a lot of people are attending conferences, and some people can avoid the uncomfortable necessity of having a headphone and someone speaking and translating. And there is the language barrier to ask questions to the speaker. There are a lot of language barriers to understand common expressions, many situations. It is also true that, for example, for soccer players nowadays, it is really important to be able to communicate. We have a lot of soccer players who have been abroad, and the only way to be able to interact with their coaches is simply to learn the language to be more effective in their work. And in the business or in education, we also have English as a means of communication. I always share with people that most universities, whether they're private or public universities, throughout Latin America, are now publishing their papers in English. The reason? They have a greater scope. They have more people who are eager to read about their researches because it is the common language. If you search for a topic in this moment in any of the academic browsers, you will find that most of the information will be found in English. So it is another part of the information that we need to keep in mind. Something that has to do with the brain and learning, and something that is very interesting, and it's something that really caught my attention when I was organizing this presentation, and it is what happens to the brain to those people who are bilingual or who become bilingual. There are different things. The first thing is that most of the language is stored in more than 90% of the cases on the left hemisphere where the language is stored. And depending on the age of the people, this language is stored in the same hemisphere. So this is another interesting thing. The younger people start learning, the easier it is for them to learn. So this is part of a research conducted by Dr. Ping Li in the Pennsylvania State University that found this piece of information that supports what I was just telling you. The other thing, if we practice commonly, if we practice every day, we are doing with our brain exactly the same thing that we do with muscles, and it is that we exercise. So brain works like the other muscles in the body. The more you practice, the more you are exposed to the language, the easier it is for the gray matter to grow. So this is another of the reasons why people should consider English as a key element of the education and the different levels of education. Now, the other thing, it improves life quality. Now, finding information online, it's easier if we search for them with keywords in English. The music industry has a greater scope if we use English. We have a lot of situations that demonstrate that. Shakira started singing in English for the Anglo audience long time ago. And now she's world famous. And so has other artists, so have other artists done in the world. And now they are known in different places. Most of the information, most of the people who share knowledge do it in English. Now we have access to podcasts. Now we have access to a lot of sources of information different from past times when we were students. And I'm not going to mention like age or anything, but that was the old-fashioned education in the past. Now, different things, the access to job opportunities. If you go to any job search engine, you will find that most of the jobs now say, we need B1 level according to the European framework of reference. We need C1 level. We need a bilingual person. We need, why? Because most of the customers are in different places in the world and they need to communicate with them. So this opens another chapter that we're not going to talk too much today about it, and it is the cultural knowledge that we should have about different things. Now, something really curious and something that I always tell people. There is a new way of working. Pandemic moved all the processes 5 years in time, or some industries, maybe 10 years in time. And we are doing things like this. And I always show this example because he's a Colombian who did this. This is Alexander Torrenegra, and this is Torre.co. Torre.co just saw a business possibility with the industry of creating commercials and radio ads. And what they did is that they found people who were willing to work on this industry, but they were too far away. So what they do is that they have people from one place in the world connected with another person in the world and working together. So I can be here in Bogota today, and I can be working with someone in Buenos Aires, I can be working with someone in Shanghai. We're working on a project. So it is at a lower cost, it is more efficient, and it is a growing industry. So all the BPOs that now are establishing their companies in Colombia are not a coincidence. They happen for a reason. But I always tell people that this is not new. This is not a new trend. This is nothing that started yesterday. Most of the institutions are now preparing learners for the 21st century. But this started way long ago. And it was the cover of Time magazine in 2006. So the new kind of learners is not something new. It's something that we have done. Now, what is happening? We're having migration situations in different places in the world. We have climate change affecting a lot of things. So we are demanding a new kind of professional. We're demanding a new kind of graduate. So this is where bilingual education helps universities, schools, institutions go ahead and work with this. Why? 21st century is no longer a distant reality. 21st century is happening now. What is happening as well? Well, we're experiencing a rapid change. A lot of things are changing. The models of education are changing. The way we learn is changing. We have a new type of learner that is empowered. Students no longer accept the information of the teacher and just stay with the information the teacher provided. They go and find the information by themselves and they question the teachers. And this is the new way the world is working. We can get the information. All we need is to change the role that we have. Something that is very curious as well. We are now very interconnected. And one situation that happens here has an immediate effect on situations that happen on the other side of the planet. Want an example? All the shipping situation that we've got in Shanghai in this moment. All this is affecting the world. the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is affecting a lot of things. We are just taking a look at the situations. Things like the agriculture is being affected throughout Latin America. Things like transportation will be affected if that situation is not solved and we don't find alternatives. So this is how we tell people we need to have the ability to express our needs and to understand the needs of new customers, of new people in different places. We need to understand the new situation locations. Why? Because there are jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago and now exist. Something like a user experience designer. All the apps that we use have to go through the process of a user experience designer. All the situations that we have to go through when we are talking about digital marketing. It's not a coincidence that we have announcements in our cell phones when we mention something. They happen for a reason. There is a team of people working in different locations. Actually, Google has headquarters here in Colombia, and they're hiring a lot of Colombian talent, but the condition is that they have to be connected with the headquarters in California. So a lot of things that didn't exist before now happen in this hyper-connected world. Again, the common language, English, and this is why it is becoming so important. The other thing is not only about the technology itself, but is how we implement it in our classes. We have a lot of apps nowadays, and we have an app for everything. But the technological innovation brings with it the new role of teachers, the new role of students. Teachers are now mentors. We are just there to help the students go through the process, to guide them in their learning path. And we have to take a look at how people learn, because people are learning differently from the past. People are not learning the same way that we did 20, 30 years ago. It's no longer just sitting and receiving the information. It's being ready for the 21st century, having critical thinking skills, having the possibility to interact with people in different cultures, being effective communicators. So I can continue. There are a lot of things. Working in collaboration with people in different places. It's something that we need to take into account. And I have worked, for example, with people from different places in the world in projects, and the common language was English, Chinese, British, Africans. All the common language was English. Now, this is not new. If you recognize this, this is Second Life. And it started back in 1999. So all the situations that we're going through right now are not new. All these things have been there and they have evolved. Second Life was created with one purpose: survive what we had to go through in the last 2 years. For those students who were in remote areas and had no access to education, they created Second Life. Universities like Harvard, like Cambridge, like Oxford, they created virtual campuses. And these virtual campuses allowed people to attend classes, people with restrictions in mobility, people in distant locations with only one internet connection. What happened is that it evolved. And it evolved to a more hyper-connected world that is the metaverse. When did it start? Supposedly, 2021. And it brought a lot of different things. It brought a different way of thinking. It brought a different way of learning. Students go there, people go there, and they just find information. They just interact with people in different places. They create their own avatars. And now, there's a whole industry being created around the metaverse. We have used it in education for different purposes, like the original purposes of Second Life, but there are other things, and we have to be prepared for these kind of students who just navigate through that. What happens? We are no longer traditional learners. We no longer have traditional students who just sat over there and received the information. Now they start the discussion in classes. Now we have flip models of education where the students are the ones that propose what they want to discuss. Now we connect the students with students in other locations. In the past, and this is an anecdote, we used to do it via pen pals. We just wrote letters, and it took a month to get an answer back. We sent postcards, and we expected a postcard back with some of the information that we asked. So when we received it, we just didn't remember what the question was. So all these things shape the way in which we learn. How do we do it? Well, students are now getting bored with traditional education. Students, if they don't feel challenged, they are not going to pay attention to you. Students, if they are not challenged enough with different sources of information, with different types of activities that involve technology, that involve critical thinking, that involve all these things, are not going to be interested. So what happens? That we now have to think about our educational model in a different way. What is necessary? What I was mentioning before. Critical thinking and doing. All the information that we've got, what is real, what is not. What is correct, what is not. Creativity. We need to teach our students different ways to approach a problem. Collaboration. We're now more connected than ever, as I have mentioned before. Now, we need to work with the students and teachers from different places in the world. What is necessary for that communication? Cross-cultural understanding. There are different traditions, there are different ways of thinking, there are different approaches for situations. So what is appropriate? We need to teach the students that too. Communication, it's something that is extremely important. If I get the message across, I need to get the right message across so I can avoid misunderstandings. Computing, we need to use different technologies. Pandemic just taught us that we could learn how to operate something within less than a week. So students now have that ability and even more, okay? And they need to think about what they want to do, what they're very good at, and what is their career in learning self-reliance. This is the other piece of information that takes everything to innovation. What are we doing in terms of the way we're teaching? How are we using English? That is the question that I want everyone to think about today. Why is it important? There are a lot of things that are extremely important that we could discuss. Thank you very much for the time, and thank you very much for being with us today in this presentation. I think we can use this one and stay here.
Can we share?
Yeah, sure.
You think? Or should I do?
Use this one.
Yeah, okay.
Is it off? Okay, we can share this one, don't worry. Okay, that one is working.
Hi, yes. Well, thank you very much, John, for this amazing presentation on the importance of English in the modern world. I just have a couple of questions. So the first one is, how can we increase the levels of English proficiency here in Colombia?
Well, there are a lot of different things that we could do. The first thing is to demonstrate to students how important it is for their future and all the opportunities that they will achieve if they have a second language, and if they have the possibility to avoid translation, to avoid an interpreter, to skip that barrier of English. And that is being done with music, that is being done with video games, that is being done with social media nowadays. But we need to go that extra mile with the students.
Okay, great. And do you have any advice for public policy makers or decision makers to actually get their hands on the field and actually improve the learning experience and the learning possibilities for Colombian children around the country?
There is something really interesting that I always tell teachers and policymakers, and it is do some research on the interests of the students. Is what motivates learners to learn something. Because the old model of education that we had in Colombia was not really motivating. But if we find those preferences of the students, if we just touch that little nerve on the students, something that activates their interest for the language, it is going to be the best thing that we could do. How do we do that? Giving the students more possibilities for programs. A couple of years ago, I used to follow the scholarships granted to students in Colombia. And I stopped doing it because it was really painful to see why some students were not getting it. They were from social strata 0, 1, and 2. They had very good grades in school. They had very good ICFES or Prueba Saber, but they didn't have a level of English. And that was the prerequisite for international universities to accept them. For those who made it, for those who participated in other programs, who demonstrated that interest, they managed to go and they are back in the country, helping their communities and doing a lot of work to boost all these students who want to go ahead and take their education to the next level.
Thank you. And what you said really, it's a nice segue to my next question, which is, I fear that access to English might be filtered by privilege or lack of, privilege. And you mentioned the metaverse and Second Life and technology as a means to get English accessible, but I fear that might also be an impediment for most Colombians to ultimately access those learning platforms.
Well, the thing is that connectivity in Colombia is not one of the greatest, but compared to other countries in Latin America, we have a decent level of connectivity that helps learners to be able to connect. What we need to do is to switch the interests of the students, to tell them, okay, these are the social media that you're using, but who are you following on social media? What are you doing in terms of learning new things? I always tell, for example, students that they can use music as an excuse. Some of them love online games, and I have seen public students go into a park where there's connectivity and getting connected to their games. And the interesting thing is that they are learning because children in different locations or people in different locations in the world interact with them, and they just feel like, oh, I need to learn, I need to do this. So if we just take them on the right path, it will be an easy thing to do. It will be definitely a really easy task to achieve with them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I know that for me, my own experience, I learned passively through YouTube, through watching friends. And friends of mine also learn via video games and stuff. So I really agree with you.
I always share the experience that the first thing that motivated me to learn was actually video games. Back when I was a child, that was quite a long time ago, we had Nintendo. Zelda had two options, English and Japanese. And thank you, Japanese is not my thing. So I had to learn. So by the time that I had the possibility to study English formally, I had advanced a lot because I knew a lot of vocabulary from this. And I always tell people, find that thing that motivates you to learn and then use it as something to help you in your learning process.
Thank you, I completely agree. Well, with that, I think we can wrap up.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to share this with you. I hope that you take some of this as an advice to motivate learners to learn, and if you're a student, to motivate yourself. There are a lot of opportunities, there are a lot of scholarships, and there are a lot of industries that are demanding professionals, technicians, but they have to speak English. Thank you so much for the invitation.
And thank you, John.
Have a good one. Thank you.